The stars were on fire, and the galaxy trembled under the weight of a war that never should have reached Earth. For years, humanity had stayed on the sidelines while the ancient alien empires tore each other apart. Earth had no interest in conquest or territory. We were the quiet ones, the listeners, the watchers. While others fought with plasma and gravity bombs, we focused on survival. But when the Eric's Dominion unleashed its fleet of planet killers, wiping out entire worlds without mercy, humans could not look away. They didn't enter the war with weapons. They sent ships full of medics, engineers, and rescue teams. They pulled civilians out of burning orbitals, patched up wounded soldiers from both sides, and even risked their own lives to save enemy younglings. The galaxy noticed, but not the way we hoped. The Dominion, cold and logical, saw humanity's mercy as weakness. And in the mind of a conqueror, weakness is a target. The attack came swift and merciless. Mars was the first to fall, consumed in a blaze of plasma that left nothing but radioactive dust. Then Luna, Earth's moon, was turned red and dead, shattered by orbital strikes that melted its surface. The Dominion didn't speak. They didn't demand surrender. They simply wanted Earth gone. Earth's last fleet gathered above Europa, a final line of defense with nowhere left to run. Among the hundreds of ships, the HSS Resolute stood at the center. A heavy-class command cruiser, it was old but dependable, much like its captain, Commander Eli Vance. He had fought in the silence, patrolled the borders, and seen more stars die than anyone ever should. Now he stood facing the end, knowing the battle to come was unwinnable. But Eli wasn't alone. On board the Resolute, hidden from most of the crew, was a strange passenger, an alien woman who called herself Arya. She never spoke. She wore a smooth silver mask and kept to the shadows of the ship. The record said she was Solari, a species long believed extinct after the Dominion erased their homeworld from existence a century ago. Nobody knew why she was on the ship. She had no orders, no assignment. She simply watched. Eli didn't press her. He had enough to worry about. Fuel shortages, terrified crews, and the knowledge that even if they won this battle, Earth might not survive the next. But something about Arya lingered in his mind. She carried herself with a grace that didn't match the chaos of war. There was power behind the silence. Sadness, too. On the eve of the battle, with the Dominion fleet closing in, Eli found himself alone with her on the observation deck. He had no plan to speak, but the silence between them grew heavy, and the words slipped out before he could stop them. "You look beautiful today," he said. Not as a joke, not out of desperation, but simply because it was true. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the starlight, and her stillness had a kind of fragile strength. She turned toward him slowly, as if waking from a long dream. Then, for the first time, she removed the mask. What lay beneath was not just a face. It was a memory of stars, a presence ancient and eternal. Her eyes glowed with the light of galaxies long gone. "You should not have said that," she whispered. Her voice was soft, filled with something Eli didn't recognize at first. Not anger, something deeper. "Why?" he asked, confused. Her eyes met his. "Because it is the mating phrase of my people." Eli's heart skipped. He wasn't even sure how to respond. "Oh, sorry?" She laughed, a strange, melodic sound that echoed in the quiet chamber. "No," she said. "I accept." That was when the Dominion arrived. The deck shook. The lights dimmed. The first volley of enemy fire lit up space like a dying sun. All around them, alarms blared. But Arya didn't flinch. She stood tall, eyes blazing, and lifted one hand toward the stars. A ripple tore across the void, unseen by human eyes but felt deep in the bones of the universe. A Dominion cruiser, fully armed and shielded, shattered into nothingness without warning. Not from a missile, not from a beam, from something else, something older than science. Eli turned to her, stunned. "What the hell are you?" he asked. She looked at him, calm and unshaken. "Your wife," she said. "Apparently." And just like that, everything began to change. The bridge of the Resolute was chaos. Red lights flashed, officers shouted commands, and the stars outside twisted with fire as the Dominion fleet moved in like a wave of death. But amidst all that noise, Commander Eli Vance couldn't take his eyes off Arya. Just minutes ago, she had stood calmly beside him, a silent passenger. Now she had torn a fully armed Dominion cruiser apart with a gesture. No weapon, no warning, just a sudden, terrible collapse of metal and matter, as if the ship had been erased from existence by something older than time. The Dominion noticed. Their fleet shifted formation. Scanners showed new energy patterns, pulses meant to track things beyond normal physics. They knew something unnatural had happened. They were hunting now, not just for the Resolute, but for whatever had destroyed their ship. Eli knew then that Arya wasn't just another survivor or a mysterious guest. She was something else entirely, something powerful enough to turn the tide of the war. Arya stood by his side, her mask in one hand, her expression unreadable. "You need to tell me what you are," Eli said, his voice low but urgent. Arya's gaze was distant, as if she was listening to voices far beyond the stars. "My kind were once guardians," she said quietly. "We were peacekeepers in the time before written history, before species knew words like war or empire. We watched the balance of energy and life. But when the Dominion came, they feared us, so they wiped us out." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the console. "I was the last, hidden by those who loved me, placed into deep sleep until it was safe." Eli shook his head slowly, trying to grasp the scale of what she was saying. "Why now?" he asked. "Why wake up now?" She turned her glowing eyes to him. "Because you said I was beautiful," she said softly. "And that woke something I thought I had lost forever. Hope." Outside the ship, the Dominion armada closed in. Their weapons glowed with sick green light, and their engines screamed through the void. Earth's last fleet had spread itself thin, trying to protect the supply routes and refugee vessels still evacuating from Europa and Titan. The Resolute was the center, the command, and the beacon. If it fell, the rest would scatter. Eli opened a comm channel. "All ships, this is Commander Vance. You are not alone. We hold the line here. Do not break formation. Reinforcements may not be coming, but something else might be with us." The officers around him gave confused glances. They didn't know what had happened yet, didn't understand what Arya truly was, but they trusted him. And Eli trusted. Arya stepped forward, her eyes closed. A strange humming filled the ship, soft at first, then louder, vibrating through the hull like a heartbeat from the stars themselves. The lights dimmed, energy readings spiked. The crew shouted warnings about overload, but Eli held up a hand. "Let her work," he said. Outside, the battlefield shifted. A web of shimmering light bloomed from the Resolute's hull, spreading like wings made of stardust. The first wave of Dominion fighters hit the web and vanished. No explosion. No impact. They simply disappeared as if falling into a dream they could never leave. The larger ships hesitated, their formations breaking slightly. That was all the window humanity needed. The fleet moved. Human ships weren't as advanced, but they were smart, fast, tricky. They danced between Dominion cruisers, weaving through firestorms with precision and grit. Pilots called out targets, gunships blasted through gaps, and frigates rammed when they had to. They fought like creatures with nothing to lose, and everything to protect. Arya opened her eyes. "More are coming," she said. "The Dominion will not stop until they burn everything, but I can give you more than protection. I can give you knowledge. Weapons made of time, shields made of gravity. But it will cost me." Eli looked at her, his jaw clenched. "How much?" Arya's smile was sad. "If I go too far, I will disappear. My form was not made for this age. I am only here because of your voice, because you saw me." The ship trembled again. Another wave approached. Arya turned and stepped into the center of the command bridge. She lifted both hands and whispered words no one understood. And from the stars, something answered. A shape unfolded. A spiral of light and sound, something impossible, something alive. It roared silently and swept into the Dominion fleet like a ghost made of storms. Eli watched, stunned. All around them, his crew stared, breathless. The tide had turned. Not because of weapons or numbers, but because of one compliment, one moment of kindness. And now, humanity had a fighting chance. The battle above Europa turned into something no one had seen before. Not in any war record, not in any alien scroll. Ships blinked out of space without a trace. Energy waves rippled through the stars like echoes from a living storm. And at the center of it all was Arya, floating just inches above the floor of the Resolute's bridge, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, her voice a quiet stream of words that didn't belong to any known language. Commander Eli Vance stood firm, even as the floor beneath his boots trembled, and the ship's systems went haywire trying to understand what was happening. All around him, his crew was frozen between fear and awe, their fingers still hovering over weapon systems, their minds struggling to grasp how the impossible had become real. The Dominion ships had paused, not out of mercy, but confusion. For the first time, their scanners showed no logic in the human counterattack. No code, no pattern, just anomaly. That's what the Dominion feared most. Things they couldn't calculate, things that didn't make sense. And Arya was exactly that. Suddenly the enemy reacted. A swarm of sleek black interceptors broke formation and screamed toward the Resolute, their thrusters burning like twin suns. They were fast, deadly, and armed with quantum lances, weapons meant to break shields at the molecular level. Arya's web of starlight trembled as the first wave struck. One ship vanished, but another slipped through. Then another. Eli barked orders. Fire all point defense. Manual aim. Do not let them reach the hull. The ship lit up with turrets and pulses of raw plasma. Dozens of interceptors broke apart in mid-space, but not all. One crashed into the hull, drilling deep. Red lights bathed the bridge. Breach on deck 5, shouted the security officer. They're boarding. Arya's voice was calm. They're not after the ship, they're after me. Eli didn't hesitate. He drew his sidearm, checked the charge, and turned to his second-in-command. You've got the bridge, I'm going with her. Arya looked at him surprised. You would fight for me? He nodded. No, I'll fight with you. There's a difference. Together they rushed toward the lower levels, racing down narrow passageways lit only by flickering backup lights and the glow from Arya's presence. Her very steps left trails of warmth in the air, and Eli could feel reality bending slightly as they passed. They reached Deck 5 to find chaos. Dominion soldiers, tall, armor-clad monsters with insect-like masks, were already inside, tearing through bulkheads and cutting down crew. Eli didn't think. He opened fire, dropping the lead invader with a clean shot to the neck joint. Arya raised her hand and the air around her pulsed. The walls themselves seemed to fold, swallowing two attackers whole in a blur of silver and blue. The rest of the boarding party hesitated. That was a mistake. The human security team arrived from behind, armed with pulse rifles and old-fashioned grit. It was a short, brutal fight. When it ended, the deck was littered with broken bodies and the crackle of failing Dominion tech. Eli turned to Arya, breathing hard. Are you hurt? She shook her head. They were not ready for a bonded one. A what? He asked. She reached out and touched his temple. In that moment, images flashed across his mind, planets spinning in triple suns, creatures of thought and flame, the fall of her world, the burial of her kind beneath oceans of starlight. And then he saw it, what bonding meant. Not marriage, not love in the human sense, but a link between souls, a bridge of energy between two living forces. She had accepted his words not as flattery, but as a vow. And now his strength fed hers. His will shielded her being. They were, somehow, one. Eli staggered slightly but held on. You should have warned me, he muttered. She smiled faintly. You didn't ask. Alarms blared again, more ships approaching, bigger ones. The Dominion was sending a dreadnought, a planet killer, something that could burn an entire Moon in one blast. The Resolute wouldn't survive a hit. Arya turned to Eli, her expression now grim. "It's time we stop running," she said. "I will show you what my people left behind." She raised both hands again, but this time not to shield. This time to awaken. The air around them thickened. The walls of the ship began to change, shifting as if made of liquid metal. From deep within the Resolute, something ancient stirred. Something not built by human hands. And as the ship began to change, to evolve, to become something more, Eli understood. They were no longer fighting to survive. They were becoming the weapon the galaxy didn't see coming. And it had all started with a simple compliment. The stars around them shifted as the Resolute transformed from a warship into something new, something alive. Eli stood on the command deck, gripping the rail as light pulsed beneath his boots and the floor hummed like a beating heart. Arya stood in the center, arms raised, her body floating once more as energy swirled around her in ribbons of silver. The ship's walls rippled like waves, reshaping and merging with the strange patterns she summoned. Ancient lines lit up across the panels, language older than the Dominion, older than Earth's history books. The crew stared in silence as their vessel morphed into a fusion of human steel and alien essence. Turrets grew sleeker, engines stretched out like wings, and the shields shimmered with a strange starlit veil. When it was done, the Resolute didn't look like a ship. It looked like a creature born from the heart of a dying star. Above them, the Dominion dreadnought dropped out of warp with a thunderclap of gravity, blotting out the stars. It was monstrous, 10 times their size, armed with weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. It didn't fire right away. It scanned, confused by what it saw. Human ships didn't glow with alien power. Human ships didn't hum with ancient energy. But the Resolute now broke every rule. It wasn't just human anymore, it was bonded. It was something the Dominion couldn't predict. Arya turned to Eli, her voice soft but clear. "They fear what they don't understand. Let's give them a reason." With a nod, Eli gave the command. "All hands, battle stations, prepare to fight." The fight began with a roar. The Dominion unleashed its first strike, a beam of pure annihilation meant to melt hulls and erase minds. But the Resolute didn't break. Arya raised her hand, and the beam bent, curling away like smoke in the wind. The bridge crew gasped, but Eli only stared. "Fire back," he ordered. The upgraded plasma cannons lit the darkness, not in red or blue, but in white, like lightning pulled straight from a storm. The blast tore through a Dominion frigate in one shot. It didn't explode. It simply unraveled, piece by piece. Atoms scattered into dust. The dreadnought retaliated, launching wave after wave of drone swarms and guided torpedoes. The Resolute danced through space like it had wings, spinning and twisting, every move guided by Arya's thoughts and Eli's instincts. She moved like a conductor, and the ship obeyed. Torpedoes shattered against their new shield. Drones burned in beams of raw energy. On the surface, the Dominion still had the numbers, but the Resolute had become something else, something free. Inside the ship, the crew worked without panic. They trusted Eli. They trusted Arya. Even the ship's AI, once cold and mechanical, now responded with strange fluidity, learning faster than ever. It called Arya Core Voice and Eli Shield Prime. Together they pushed forward deeper into the heart of the enemy fleet. "Cut off their command relay," Eli said. "We knock out their control. The rest scatter." Arya closed her eyes and whispered a word. The space around the dreadnought twisted, then cracked. A rift opened for just a moment, and inside it, the Dominion command center flickered, exposed. Eli fired everything. Missiles, beams, kinetic rounds, they all poured through the rift like a storm, and when it closed there was silence. The dreadnought's lights dimmed, its drones froze. The chain of command was broken, but the Dominion wouldn't run. Not yet. One of their elite, a warlord named Carvax, broke formation and charged toward the Resolute. piloting a personal attack ship covered in armor and glowing with dark red runes. It rammed straight into the Resolute's side, locking claws onto the hull and tearing its way into the ship's outer shell. A boarding signal hit the bridge. "They're coming in again," shouted one officer. Eli turned to Arya. "We end this inside." They met Carvax in the engine chamber, the heart of the ship now pulsing with alien energy and human technology fused together. The warlord towered over them, his armor dripping with plasma and hate. "You stole her," he growled at Eli. "She was meant to be a weapon for the Dominion." Arya stood between them. "I was never yours. I chose." Carvax laughed, a sound like metal grinding. "You bonded with a human? You gave your power to them?" Eli stepped forward. "She didn't give me anything, we built it together." Then the chamber exploded into chaos. Carvax moved like a storm, blades and fire and shadows. But Eli was faster than before. Arya had changed him, strength, speed, awareness. They flowed through him like electricity. The fight was brutal. Steel against plasma, fists against claws. Each blow echoed through the ship. Arya didn't interfere. She stood back, watching, her eyes full of light and something else. Hope. Eli finally drove his blade into the warlord's core, cracking the armor and sending sparks flying. Carvax fell with a snarl, his voice fading into static. Eli dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "You okay?" he asked Arya. She nodded. "You are more than I hoped for." He smiled. "Told you I had good aim." Outside, the Dominion fleet was in chaos, their command broken, their dreadnought silent, their elite defeated. The remaining ships turned away, fleeing toward the edges of the system. For now, humanity had won. But the bond had awakened more than power. It had drawn attention, ancient attention, watching from beyond the stars. Eli and Arya stood side by side, unaware that their fight was only beginning. The stars above burned quiet after the battle, but the silence didn't bring peace. Eli stood on the deck of the Resolute, watching what remained of the Dominion fleet scatter across the darkness like wounded animals. The crew cheered. Earth's forces hailed them. Messages came in from allied planets, praise, thanks, relief. But Eli didn't smile. Something had changed during the fight. The bond between him and Arya had deepened, and now he could feel things he couldn't explain, like a shadow pressing on the edge of his mind. Arya stood beside him, her silver eyes glowing softly, her hair drifting like it moved underwater. "They saw," she whispered. "Others like me, the ones who sleep." Eli turned. "Who are they?" She looked out the viewport, her face calm but tight. "My creators, or maybe my jailers. I don't know anymore, but they're waking. Up now, because of us." The warning came before dawn. A star vanished, just blinked out of the galaxy like someone crushed it between their fingers. Telescopes across human space recorded the moment. One by one, other stars followed. 12 gone in under an hour. Not destroyed by the Dominion. Not black holes, just gone. The scientists called it impossible. The old empires called it prophecy. Arya called it a summons. "They are reaching," she said, "searching for me." Eli felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Why now?" Her voice dropped. "Because I changed the bond. I chose a human. I gave power to someone they see as lesser." She looked up at him. "To them that is betrayal." Admiral Kale ordered the Resolute to return to Earth orbit, not to celebrate, but to prepare. The council had already gathered, alarmed by the news of vanishing stars. The skies above Earth were filled with defense grids, orbital cannons, and allied ships. It looked like a world ready for siege. Arya refused to step foot on the surface. "If I go down there, I draw them to your home. I will not risk that." Eli didn't argue. He stayed with her. The bond made it hard to leave her side. Their connection wasn't just emotional now, it was physical, spiritual, something beyond either of them. When she hurt, he felt it. When he doubted, she steadied him. And now, as fear spread across human space like wildfire, she was the calm in the storm. On the third night, the sky cracked. A tear in reality appeared just beyond Jupiter's orbit, a wound in space itself. From that rift, a shape emerged. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't even a creature. It was a construct of thought and energy miles wide, humming with symbols that twisted and rewrote themselves constantly. It didn't broadcast. It didn't fire. It watched. Then more appeared. One near Saturn, another near Pluto. 5 in total, each taking a place like sentinels around the solar system. Every human ship that approached them was erased. No weapons fired, no defenses raised. Just silence, then dust. Earth went into full lockdown. Panic surged across the globe. The council demanded answers. Arya said only one thing. They are waiting for me to surrender. Eli didn't sleep. He studied every readout, every energy signal, every movement the constructs made. But there was nothing. No weakness, no traceable power source, no language. They were just there like gods waiting to judge. Then a message finally arrived. Not a transmission, not a voice. A pulse that echoed inside Arya's mind, and through her into Eli's. Return to the threshold. Be unmade. Arya staggered, but did not fall. Eli caught her. What does it mean? He asked. Her breath trembled. They want to undo me. Undo us. The council voted to exile Arya. Earth's leaders feared the wrath of these star devourers and wanted to offer her as a sacrifice. Eli stood before them, defiant. She saved us, she gave us power, we don't run from that. But fear ruled the chamber. Soldiers were dispatched to remove Arya from the Resolute. Eli stood between them, weapon drawn. She's not your prisoner. But before blood could spill, Arya touched his shoulder. Let me go, I'll find the threshold, I'll face them. I can't let your kind suffer for my rebellion. Eli stared into her eyes. Then I'm going with you. She hesitated. This path ends in fire. He smiled. Then we burned together. They fled before dawn, the Resolute diving into deep space, heading toward a place older than maps, toward the threshold. Behind them, Earth watched in silence. Above them, the gods of the stars turned to follow. The stars blurred past the Resolute as it pushed through uncharted space, beyond every known jump gate and drift point. Eli stood beside Arya on the bridge, watching the deep black swirl with strange lights that bent like ribbons of thought. They were leaving the galaxy now, heading toward a place Arya called the Threshold, a place older than time, where reality frayed at the edges. Every system flickered with interference. The ship's AI could no longer map where they were. Distance stopped making sense. One moment they were drifting slowly, the next entire clusters rushed past in a breath. But Arya never looked away from the path. They built this road long ago, she said, her voice heavy, for beings like me. But I was never meant to return along it with you. Eli only nodded. The bond between them had grown so deep, words were sometimes unnecessary. Her fear became his hope became hers. They moved as one. And they knew something waited, at the end that might break even that unity. When they reached the edge of all things, space itself looked torn open. A glowing abyss hung before them, a swirling maw of color and silence deeper than thought. From within it pulsed the same strange rhythm Eli had felt in his dreams, a heartbeat not of flesh, but of memory and light. The threshold. Arya's face was pale as frost. If we cross, she said, we step into their mind, into what they were before they fell into silence. Eli placed his hand on hers. We came this far. Let's finish it. The ship passed through. There was no sound, no pain, just a moment where Eli's mind felt stretched, like someone pulled every part of him across centuries, and then suddenly, let go. He gasped and stumbled, and when he looked up, the universe had changed. They stood in a realm of living geometry. Shapes moved through the air like thoughts with weight. Massive structures floated in the void, temples made of shifting crystal, machines that folded and refolded themselves endlessly. Beings watched them from afar. Giants of light and metal with no faces, no mouths, but eyes that saw through every layer of Eli's being. Arya stepped forward, her body glowing faintly. "We are here," she said. "I have come to answer your summons." One of the watchers moved, gliding without effort, its body rearranging into symbols and runes. It did not speak, but Eli heard its voice inside his soul. "You betrayed your kind. You touched the lesser flame. You brought corruption." Arya did not look away. "I brought choice, I brought love, I brought change." The being's light flared, and suddenly Eli was flung into memory. He stood in a city made of stars, watching as Arya was forged in a great tower, created not to feel, but to control. Around him, her memories unfolded like a storm. He saw the other Celestials, cold, brilliant, and cruel, building life as tools, not children. He saw Arya locked in sleep for thousands of years, waiting. Then he saw her awaken again, the moment he complimented her and the bond took root. That tiny, simple act of kindness had changed the entire pattern of her existence, and it had set fire to the old order. He came back to the present, gasping. The Watcher hovered above them now. "You must be erased," it said. "You carry the fracture." Eli raised his head, shaking with rage. "Then erase me, leave her." But Arya stepped in front of him. "No, I carry it too. We are one. If you take him, you lose me. If you destroy us, you destroy what your creators feared most, freedom." The air around them twisted. Other Watchers joined the first. Their forms flickered with confusion, as if what Arya said had never occurred to them. The bond pulsed between Eli and Arya, visible now, a thread of living light. It grew brighter the more they stood together. The Watchers began to split, half retreating, half advancing. And then the world itself began to collapse. The threshold could not hold such contradiction. It had been built for obedience, not defiance. One of the Watchers screamed, not with sound but with a blast of raw will lashing out. Arya raised her hand, catching the blow, her body burning with white light. She turned to Eli. "I can hold them back, but you must leave. Take this truth to your people, show them the bond." Eli grabbed her shoulders. "Not without you." She kissed him once, her voice breaking. "If I fall here, it's not the end. You carry me. Always." Then she pushed him away with a wave of energy, and the light swallowed everything. Lie woke on the Resolute, floating alone in deep space. The threshold was gone. The Watchers were gone. But something inside him remained, a light that pulsed with Arya's presence. The bond had not broken, it had evolved, and far across the stars, humanity would feel its power soon. The Resolute drifted through quiet space, far beyond any mapped region, but something in the stars had changed. Eli stood alone on the bridge, watching the dark sky ripple gently, as if something unseen moved just beneath its surface. His hands trembled slightly as he held the last recorded energy from Arya, a glowing shard of light still pulsing with her essence. She had sacrificed herself at the threshold, holding back the ancient Watchers that had once created her, protecting Eli and the truth they now shared. But even in her final act, she had not truly vanished. Her presence lived in that shard, and in Eli's mind, her voice echoed like a quiet flame. "You carry me. Always." Grief and purpose burned together in his chest as he plotted a return course toward human space. He had to share what they'd discovered. He had to bring the truth home. As the ship entered known space, signals from human colonies began to flood in. But what Eli heard sent chills down his spine. A galactic coalition had declared humanity a growing threat. Word of Earth's rapid technological growth, combined with the fact that one of their own had made contact with an ancient celestial, had sparked fear. The coalition's ships were already moving in. Earth's skies were filled with blockades, and a full invasion was hours away. They feared the bond, feared what Eli represented. It wasn't just about humanity's strength. It was about the idea that love, connection, and free will could change even the most ancient power. To them, that was dangerous. Eli knew what had to be done. He turned the Resolute toward the war front, not away. If they wanted a reason to fear humanity, he'd give it to them, but not with hatred, with truth. As the Resolute approached the Earth blockade, coalition dreadnoughts moved to intercept. Warnings blared, hailing Eli as a rogue agent, a corrupted, being carrying celestial infection. He stood before the ship's transmission array and opened a direct channel to the entire fleet. "My name is Eli Voss," he said, voice calm but firm. "And I carry something new. Something your ancient fears tried to bury. I loved a being you tried to shape into a weapon. She became more. We became more. And you can't stop that with fleets." The commanders ignored him. Plasma batteries began to charge. But just as the first shot fired, the glowing shard in Eli's hand flared. And across the void, something shifted. The light from the shard burst into the sky, forming a vast projection of Arya, tall, radiant, undeniable. She spoke not in words, but in a cascade of thoughts and emotions that every species could feel. Love, memory, freedom, the weight of sacrifice. The coalition fleets hesitated. Some ships stood down. Others, commanded by the most fearful, opened fire. But the energy from Arya's echo shielded the Resolute. Earth responded moments later. Hidden defense systems previously dormant awakened. Humanity had not spent its time idly. They had grown, prepared, and adapted. A dozen human ships leapt in system, smaller, sleeker, but faster and more advanced than anything coalition intel had guessed. The battle began. Lasers and missiles tore the black sky apart. Eli flew the Resolute straight into the thick of it, his eyes never leaving Arya's light in the sky. Coalition cruisers swarmed, but Eli maneuvered with deadly precision using tricks he'd learned in the Outer Wilds, spinning the ship through gaps no sane pilot would attempt, slipping between blasts, luring enemies into crossfire. The human ships followed his lead, using speed over brute force. Still, the battle tilted. The coalition had numbers. But something shifted again. From colonies, outposts, and even neutral worlds, ships began arriving. Not human, not coalition, independent. Pirate, explorer, smuggler. All had seen the light. All had felt Arya's message. And they chose to fight for it. Suddenly, the battle was more than survival. It was a rebellion against fear. A revolt against ancient control. Under the banner of Eli's message, the scattered and diverse rallied together. And in the chaos, Eli saw one of the main coalition flagships charging its superweapon. If it fired, Earth would be lost. Without hesitating, he pushed the Resolute into a direct course, too fast, too reckless, even for him. The ship groaned, alarms screamed, but he kept going. As he neared the massive vessel, he opened the shard and whispered, "One last time, Arya." The light expanded, enveloping the Resolute in a blazing cocoon. It struck the flagship's core. No explosion, just silence and light. Then, nothing. For a moment, the battlefield froze. The flagship was gone. The Resolute was gone. But every being there felt something pass through them. Peace, clarity, a memory not their own. And when it faded, so did the fear. Eli had made the ultimate sacrifice, but the bond he and Arya shared had changed everything. Across the galaxy, the silence after the great battle did not feel like defeat. It felt like something sacred had passed through the stars, something that no one could explain, yet all remembered. The coalition withdrew, not out of fear, but confusion, even respect. Their strongest weapon was gone, their command in ruins, and they had no explanation for how or why. What remained in its place was only light, a soft, pulsing star where the Resolute had once been. For weeks it glowed, above Earth's skies like a second moon, untouchable and quiet. People began calling it the Bond Light. Children made stories about the man who flew into fire and came out as light. Monuments were built across Earth and beyond, in the deserts of Mars, in the floating cities of Europa, even deep in the jungle, domes of Venus. At each of them a small plaque read, "He complimented the alien woman," and together, they changed everything. Humanity didn't just survive. It became a symbol. New alliances rose from the ashes of fear. Planets that had once closed their ports opened them to humans. Even former enemies began speaking of coexistence. Aria's final projection, the one that had saved Earth, was studied, replayed, and even translated into a new form of universal thought language called the harmonic thread. Scientists and poets worked side by side to understand its meaning. Her feelings were more than words, they were experiences. Grief, love, trust, and bravery, encoded into pulses of light and sound. And all of it tied to one person, Eli Voss. But the galaxy had not forgotten him, nor had Earth. Eli became the first name spoken in classrooms when talking about unity. He became a myth, a hero, a question mark. Did he truly die, or did he become part of something bigger? No one knew. But many believed the bond light still carried him, watching, guiding. Then one cycle later, something strange happened. A child born on a deep space colony began speaking in strange rhythms, words no one taught him. When shown images of Aria, he smiled and said, "She sings to me." More like him appeared. A girl on a border world said she dreamed of flying through flame with someone named Eli. An orphan on Titan built a model of the Resolute, without ever having seen a diagram. It was as if the bond had chosen to echo, to pass forward. These children didn't speak with power, but with peace. And when they gathered, their voices made lights flicker, machines pause, plants bloom. Not everyone understood, but no one could deny what was happening. The bond was not over. It was just beginning. Earth formed the Council of the Bond, a new kind of leadership, one that combined reason with empathy and power with memory. For the first time, representatives from other species asked to join, not to lead, but to learn. In hidden corners of the galaxy, some still feared what humanity had become, but even they whispered the name Eli with caution, because no one knew what rules the bond followed. Only that it answered love, and it protected those who carried it. Some tried to steal the shard remnants scattered after the battle, but they crumbled in greedy hands. Only those who approached with sincerity ever saw them glow. Years passed. Then, decades. On the 25th anniversary of the Lightfall, as the moment of sacrifice was now called, a faint pulse came from the bond light. It flickered, once, then twice. Then every communications array across the stars picked up a soft sound like a heartbeat. Scientists rushed to study it, but in the end it was a child who understood first. "He's still with her," the child said. "And they're coming home." Nothing more was heard. But the people of Earth looked to the sky that night with wonder, not fear. They had become more than survivors. They had become something ancient feared and love welcomed, an idea that could not be controlled, a connection that could not be destroyed. Eli had not fought with weapons alone. He had fought with feeling, and in the end it was that simple compliment, spoken on a broken bridge to a lonely alien girl, that had set it all in motion. A few kind words, a shared moment. And then, the stars were never the same again.